to my kitchen. Today's video is all about shortcuts. Even though I love to cook, I'll admit there are many days that I simply don't want to. I also acknowledge that not everybody loves cooking as much as I do. So maybe you need a break from cooking, or maybe you just don't like it, or maybe you're too busy, or maybe you're injured and can't stand for any period of time. Whatever the reason, it is possible to throw together a healthy meal with a minimum of effort. The secret is in the planning, and with a little advanced preparation, it's entirely possible. So today I'm going to put together two fast, healthy meals, one built around a can of soup and the other around a frozen burrito. Now, before I go any further, I need to let you know that I will be talking about products in this video, and I want to assure you that I did not get any money or any kind of promotional considerations from the companies I'm talking about. And if I ever do in any future videos, I will let you know up front. Now, the other thing I want to say is I've lost 90 pounds and I'm keeping it off. And yes, that's me about 9 years ago. And believe me, if I've learned anything, it's that healthy eating is inconvenient. Or maybe I should say that unhealthy eating is way too easy. So the meals that I'm going to show you today do contain more fat and salt and some refined flour than I would normally cook with. But you know, perfection is a moving target, and I truly believe that good enough is good enough on most days. And I've been keeping off the 90 pounds, so I know it works. So before we get started, I'd just like to let you know that I have an ebook, 5 Healthy Salad Dressings, Plant-Based and Oil-Free. And you can find a link to it in the description box below, where you can download it for free. So please check it out. So you walk into the kitchen. You're stressed, you're tired, you're hungry, you want something fast. Maybe you're even completely uninspired. So what do? My first piece of advice is expect that this is going to happen and be prepared for it. And planning is key here. So here are the things that I always have on my shopping list. I always make sure they're on the shelf so that when I'm in a situation like this, I can grab a meal and get it on, and it's satisfying and healthy. When it comes to things I cook in advance, I always have a container of cooked grains in my fridge. When it's empty, I immediately cook another pot. Today, this is a mixture of whole rye, whole barley, and brown rice. As far as packaged food goes, frozen vegetables are always on my grocery list. Broccoli, cauliflower, green peas, green beans, kale, and spinach are my staples. The nice thing about frozen veggies is that if you don't use them, they don't go bad. When it comes to canned food, and yes, I'm not beyond opening a can, Health Valley makes a line of salt-free soups that I'm partial to. I like the lentil, the vegetable, and the minestrone, but since the beginning of the pandemic, I've only been able to find the vegetable soup at the grocery store. So I order the other two, the lentil and the minestrone, online. Even though I make my own veggie broth, in a perfect world, I always have a jar of my own homemade stuff in the fridge. But since the world isn't perfect, I also have a package of veggie broth on the shelf. When it comes to any packaged food that's available at the supermarket, I found that it's usually either available oil-free or salt-free, but rarely both. So I read the label and choose the lowest possible amount. Two other things that I always keep on my shelf are a can of diced tomatoes and a can of tomato paste. So I'm starting with the burrito, and I just like to say Amy's makes 2 non-dairy burritos. Only one is labeled non-dairy. But she also makes a black bean burrito that's also vegan. So I don't know why both of them aren't labeled non-dairy, but these are both okay. I'm going to make the black bean today. And I'd also like to just make an aside that Trader Joe's has a bean and rice burrito, which over the years I've stopped using because I find that it just has, it's mostly tortilla and not very much filling. The first thing I'm going to do is open the burrito, put it on a small plate, and thaw it in the microwave. I'm putting, that's about a minute and a half. Just to thaw it a little bit. So while the microwave is going and my burrito is thawing, I am going to get out my frozen veggies. And I'm just putting a generous handful. I'm putting a generous handful of green beans onto my plate. And I am also going to take a generous handful of broccoli. And this is for one I'm making right now. Usually I've been cooking for two, but today I've decided to just make for one. Now I'm getting the burrito out of the microwave and putting the broccoli and green beans in. Okay, I thawed my vegetables in the microwave, I've thawed my burrito in the microwave, and now I'm ready to start building my plate. The first thing I'm going to do is take, the first thing I'm going to do is take a handful of my packaged arugula, and now I'm going to take a handful of packaged spinach. Put that on the plate. And I'm going to take my burrito and put that on top of the greens. Now I'm going to take my container of rice and I'm going to put some on the side. Sorry, I should say whole grains. This is not, there is a little rice in here, but it's mostly rye and barley. And finally, I'm going to, one of the things I also have in the fridge, and this is a good time to use up if you have some leftover beans. In this case, I've got some leftover, I like to call these unfried beans, not refried beans, and maybe that'll be my next video, because I make them a lot. But if you have some leftover black beans or pintos or chickpeas, you can put those on. They don't have to be mushed or spiced. It just adds a little bit extra texture and flavor. The other thing that I've done, and I did this for years, I use jarred salsa. And it does add a nice flavor, but I gave up salt about 2.5 years ago, and so I don't use, I just found that salsa has too much salt for me. But go ahead, if you like salsa and you use it, or you can find something salt-free, go right ahead and use it. But I just use my can of diced tomatoes that I keep on the shelf. I also always have an open can of diced tomatoes. in my fridge. I put them on a lot of things. One of the reasons I'm loading the tomatoes on here is because if you don't, it dries out. Really, it'll dry out in the microwave. It needs to have moisture. So I make sure that everything is coated with tomatoes or with a little bit of tomato juice. If you're so inclined, but this is about a fast meal with no chopping involved, but if you're so inclined, you can chop up some green chilies, you could chop up some onion or red pepper and put that on the top. But this is about fast, easy, and this is about as basic as it gets. So I put my plate together. I'm going to put it in the microwave for another 3 minutes. Microwave times, as you know, will vary. I have a pretty wimpy microwave, so I'm going to leave it in a lot longer. If I had a more powerful microwave, you might only need to, if you have a more powerful microwave, you might only need to let it in for maybe 2 minutes or 2.5. So let's move on to the next meal. So this is the one. Here's with the can of soup. In this case, I'm choosing the lentil soup. And what I recommend you do is start with a bowl that's bigger than you think you're going to need. That way you won't have any slop. You can just heat it up in the microwave and then you won't have any extra pots or anything to wash. So that's the other good thing about these meals. So I'm going to start with some more frozen broccoli, and to let you know, I go through this, I buy it in these 2-pound bags at Whole Foods. Sometimes I go to Costco and I'll buy it in a 4-pound bag. We go through broccoli like crazy. So, generous amount of broccoli. It will decrease in volume. It seems like a lot now, but once it thaws, it will decrease in volume. And I am going to add some of the frozen kale. I also go through a lot of kale. And just sprinkle some in. I don't even worry about how much. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some veggie broth, and you're not going to use, if you open a quart container of broth, you're not going to use it all, but put it in the fridge. You can use it for sauteing, you can use it for another soup and another day. If you don't think you're going to use it, put it in the freezer. And I'm just going to pour a little bit of broth onto, just a splash of broth onto the vegetables. I'm going to put them in the microwave and give them 2 minutes. Now that my broccoli and spinach have thawed, I'm going to add the lentil soup. Stir that around. See why I said use a bowl bigger than you think you're going to need. And I'm going to spoon in some of these same diced tomatoes that I just used. Actually, pour a little of the juice in too. If you don't have diced tomatoes, a little tomato paste works well. This is also the time to add any leftovers, because that's why soup was invented. It was invented to use leftovers. You can add leftover beans or leftover vegetables if you have them. The other thing I'm going to add, and I've talked about this in other videos, I use this a lot, is my savory spice mix that I mix up, and I'll put the recipe again in the description box. I just mix up a big batch of it and keep it on my shelf. It's got dry mustard, cumin, oregano, dill, and thyme. And I'm going to put maybe half a tablespoon in, because we have extra vegetables and extra broth, so it probably needs a little extra spice as well. Not pretty, exactly, but it's utilitarian. Oh, the other thing I'm going to add is a scoop of grain. I actually like rice with lentils, but I have the grains, whole grains, so I'm just going to throw in a little bit. Stir that around, and voila! Heat it up for a final time, and you have a huge bowl of soup. Eat the whole thing. It will fill you up. Not a lot of calories, not a lot of fat, but a good healthy meal, and easy. When you don't feel like cooking, don't be afraid to open a can. So there you have it, 2 meals that were put together in a snap with the right ingredients at your fingertips. It's not hard at all if you're not feeling so inclined to cook. So don't have to call for a pizza. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And while you're at it, scroll down to the description box and click on the link to my ebook, 5 Healthy Salad Dressings, plant-based and oil-free, and you can download it for free. Thanks for watching.